Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're looking at one of the most absurd, hilarious, and honestly, pretty profound documents ever produced. It's a satirical consulting report titled Professional Opinions on Things I Know Nothing About, written by a supposed Dr. Bluff. Now picture this. You've got this high-priced management consultant who walks into a boardroom and bills exorbitant, literally eye-watering fees, essentially just to summarize a 5-minute Wikipedia skim. We have all seen this exact kind of performed certainty out there in the real world, right? Well, today, we are going to completely break down this magnificent piece of satire and figure out what it actually teaches us about corporate culture, human behavior, and the wild, absurd ways we try to manage the completely unmanageable.
Okay, let's dive into this. Dr. Bluff drops this core thesis that completely nails how the corporate world operates. Confidence is the skeleton of knowledge. Everything else is just soft tissue. In so many high-stakes environments, absolute, unwavering certainty will consistently beat out actual, nuanced expertise. It's crazy, but if you walk into a room and act like you hold the absolute, ultimate truth, the entire room will actually reorganize itself around your certainty. People lean in, they start taking notes, and they completely stop questioning the premise. The author is basically arguing that performed confidence is the actual product being sold in most strategy meetings. And, just to really highlight the pure audacity of this fictional consulting firm, get a load of this number. For a massive analysis that claims to fundamentally restructure the physical universe, the global food supply chain, and human relationships, Dr. Bluff proudly logs his total research hours across the entire project as a mere 3.4 hours. And yes, that officially includes the time he spent eating a piece of cheddar for quote-unquote field research and half watching a documentary during his lunch break. The massive gap between his staggering confidence and his hilariously minimal research budget, that is exactly the joke.
So, here's our strategic roadmap for today's engagement. First, we'll define the art of confident ignorance. Then we'll conduct a rigorous audit of the physical universe, rebrand global food dependencies, analyze human romance as a failing platform, and finally, we'll take a look at what happens when the corporate joke ends.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the art of confident ignorance. We need to look at how exactly this performed certainty plays out in practice. Because listen, this isn't just about management consulting, it is about how our entire society functions when nobody actually knows what's going on. Dr. Bluff calls this the sommelier principle. Think about wine tasting for a second. The vast majority of people, honestly even some experts in blind taste tests, are essentially just making highly educated guesses. But if you confidently describe a wine as having notes of winter mineral and pencil shavings, you instantly command the table. Describing your uncertainty using highly specific, confident vocabulary will literally always make you look like the smartest person in the room. Whether you're identifying barnyard notes in a Pinot Noir or pitching a vague Q3 synergy roadmap to a board of directors, confidently naming the unknown is simply how you win.
Moving right along to Section 2, auditing the physical universe.
So, for our first big case study, our fearless consultant decides that humanity's current understanding of the cosmos is just terribly mismanaged and it desperately requires a third-party performance review. Let's take quantum mechanics. Physicists have fully accepted the idea of Schrödinger's cat, a cat in a box that is simultaneously alive and dead until you look at it. Well, to a consultant, this is completely unacceptable. First of all, putting a cat in a radioactive box is a blatant occupational safety violation. Second, the idea that a subatomic particle can exist in superposition and just flat-out refuse to commit to a single state until a manager directly observes it, that is an unresolved HR incident. Any employee behaving like a quantum particle would immediately be put on a performance improvement plan. The universe needs to enforce its deadlines.
And this brilliantly illustrates the massive branding crisis happening over in the subatomic sector. Look at the current names. A strange quark? The Big Bang? These are chaotic, deeply uncorporate naming conventions. So Dr. Bluff proposes a complete corporate rebrand. A strange quark simply becomes a non-standard quark. The God particle gets modernized to Higgs plus the mass experience, and the Big Bang, properly corporate aligned as the phase zero origin event. It is just a flawless parody of how agencies try to rebrand things they fundamentally don't understand.
Then we audit the ocean. Humanity has mapped 100% of Mars, right? But we have only explored 4% of our own ocean. From a corporate governance standpoint, this is a massive due diligence failure. Think about it. If a junior analyst brought you a market entry recommendation having only reviewed 4% of the relevant data, you'd fire them on the spot. Yet, as a species, we are apparently totally fine with 96% of our primary planetary asset being completely unaccounted for.
Which brings us to Section 3, rebranding cheese and coffee.
So we move out of physics, and now we're treating our daily food not as culinary delights, but as critical infrastructure risks that desperately need a chief category officer. Take the global cheese industry. There are over 2,000 SKUs, stock-keeping units. That is pure artisanal anarchy. It's a product portfolio that's completely out of control. So Dr. Bluff rationalizes all of this chaos into 5 highly actionable strategic pillars. You've got sharp, which is your reliable workhorse, like cheddar. Funky, your creative agency, like blue cheese, where controlled decomposition is literally the main selling point. Melty, your utility player, like industrial mozzarella that just wants to do its job on a pizza. Prestigious, which lumps all 350 complex French cheeses under one single luxury umbrella. And finally, cheese adjacent, for the vegan alternatives. It makes perfect corporate sense, and it is deeply insulting to cheesemakers everywhere.
Now, what's really interesting about this next bit is how coffee gets reframed. Because coffee isn't just a beverage, right? It is a highly fragile dependency infrastructure supporting all of Western civilization. The author maps it out into 4 levels. First, physiological. It doesn't actually give you energy, it just postpones your tiredness until 2 p.m. Second, ritualistic. The physical mug itself cues your brain to start working. Third, social. It provides the exact, perfectly calibrated low-stakes environment for a meeting. And fourth, identity, where ordering a double ristretto oat milk cortado acts as a direct signal of your personality. The entire global white-collar workforce is running on a single point-of-failure commodity crop, and nobody has even written a risk register for what happens if it runs out.
Next up, Section 4, the modern dating market. We are now applying this cold, operational risk analysis to human behavior. Specifically, we're looking at modern romance as a failing platform ecosystem. The crucial point here is that dating apps have turned human partnership into a product listing. We are optimizing for all the wrong metrics. A modern dating profile is essentially just a corporate CV. It optimizes for photogenicity and the ability to write a witty bio, which, let's be real, are skills completely unrelated to long-term relationship compatibility. It is exactly like hiring an employee based entirely on the font they used in Microsoft Word. The market format filters for format compliance, not actual human fit, and it results in catastrophic choice overload.
And this builds perfectly into the whole phenomenon of ghosting. Why is ghosting so incredibly prevalent today? Because structurally speaking, the social cost is 0. There's no shared social graph to hold you accountable. There are literally infinite alternatives just one swipe away. And most importantly, there are 0 platform penalties. In fact, if we put our cynical consultant hats on for a second, ghosting is actually a retention tool. A user who gets ghosted doesn't leave the app. They log right back in to keep swiping. To the platform itself, a broken heart isn't a problem, it is just a highly successful user engagement metric.
Finally, we reach Section 5, when the joke ends.
So, we've reached a pretty sharp tonal pivot here. The corporate consultant voice finally drops away, and we have to confront the reality hiding behind all of this jargon. This whole time, it's been a brilliant joke about overconfidence. But what happens when that confident Dr. Bluff persona hits a wall? The author acknowledges that this armor of corporate speak, all these KPIs, the endless rationalization, it's ultimately just a coping mechanism. We use frameworks and slide decks to give ourselves the illusion of control over the terrifying, completely unmanageable uncertainties of human existence.
And honestly, nothing represents that unmanageable uncertainty more than death. Think about it. Death has a 100% conversion rate. It is the ultimate, final system outage. And yet, it remains the most underplanned event in our lives. We try so desperately to optimize our morning routines, our coffee intake, our dating profiles, but we completely ignore the one transition that is universally guaranteed. Because death cannot be optimized, it can't be rebranded, and you definitely can't manage it with a slick slide deck. The author leaves us with this incredibly poignant reflection. The irreversibility of the thing is the point. Without an ending, the story has no stakes. The very fact that we cannot control our mortality, that there is a hard, non-negotiable stop to our personal timelines, is exactly what gives our lives meaning, urgency, and beauty. The deadline is what forces us to care.
Which leaves us with a final, really provocative question. Given that condition, what are we doing with our time? Once you strip away the corporate jargon, the exhausting performance of certainty, and all the endless distractions, what actually matters to you? It's a question definitely worth asking yourself today. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this leaves you with something meaningful to chew on. See you next time.